The research project that I'm going to discuss today was a group of 4, 5, 6 students who participated in the TecnoPush challenge. You may ask, what is inquiry learning? Inquiry learning is also known by the terms of guided inquiry, information inquiry and information literacy. Now, when I first began this project, I had some vague idea that inquiry learning was learning by doing, which is a very simplistic definition, and I have found a few others that are more sophisticated to share with you. The first one here, inquiry learning is an approach that provides learners opportunities to actively develop skills that enable them to locate, gather, analyse, critique and apply information in a wide range of contexts as they develop understanding. This next one is a really good one as it applies specifically, or it seems like it applies specifically to the TecnoPush challenge. Inquiry learning is when the student is given a real-life task, has to go and find information, research the task and the information that they need, and then apply it to a problem that they have been given and come up with some kind of solution or conclusion based on what they've researched. It's not just about regurgitating information that they've found. So the real-life task here was making the cart and preparing the team to participate in the challenge. The research was when students were looking for the information they needed in order to build it, the cart that is, and present the posters and PowerPoint presentations. And then applying the research was when they applied it to solve problems to design the cart, and the final solution was to actually build it. Now, there's a lot of research and information out there on inquiry learning, and I have two models to share. The most well known is this one, Kuhltau's model of the information search process, and a lot of other proponents of information learning or inquiry learning have borrowed from this. The thing I really liked about this is if you look at the heading where it says tasks, underneath it describes feelings. So these are the feelings that students can go through as they research and try and find information. So the first one there is often uncertainty. There can be a period of optimism, and pertinent to this project is the next section where it says confusion, frustration and doubt. I really observed the students feeling this during their research process. The next one here is the Alberta inquiry model, and this is probably my preferred model. I like it better than Kuhltau because rather than being a linear structure, it's presented as a puzzle. All the pieces link together and reflection is at the centre, and it is necessary at each stage. And from the information and data analysis on this project, I think reflecting is probably one of the things that we could have done better. Now, I just want to give you an idea of the types of learning experiences students experienced as they went on throughout this project. I'm going to show you through just one strand of the project, which was team identity. Now, students also had to investigate the design process for the cart, investigating scientifically, sustainable design, design for safety, fundraising and sponsorship, and then compete in the race day. So as I go through these slides, just keep in mind that this is just one aspect and the students actually had to follow all of them through. So this first slide shows a group of students sitting around. The concept of team identity was introduced, so they were, if you look on the left-hand side, initiating, discussing the topic, they were speaking as to what their ideas were for the concept, debating, justifying, comparing and outlining. In each of these slides I will have down the left-hand side a column of verbs, and they describe the learning experiences that students were involved in. This next slide is after they had decided on the team name, Dynamite Devils, and they were trying to come up with images that were suitable for the logo. So again, looking down that left-hand side, there's a large list of verbs, and most of these are higher order thinking skills. So once the logo had been decided, the students needed to refine it. The logo that they chose was drawn up by a boy on paper. He hadn't looked at the computer to find images, he just went off and designed it, and that was the one that students liked best. But because we had to have the logo on the computer as required by the printer, he was unable to transfer this to the computer because he didn't have the skills. So he collaborated with another boy who was very computer literate, and he transferred the image to the computer. So together they were cooperating, collaborating, imagining, creating, designing. This next slide shows the logo applied to the clothing. The team identity also had to continue through to a uniform and also to the pushcart decoration. So the pushcart itself had to reflect the team identity as well. What you can see here in these pictures is the processes we went through with a small group of 3, where we had a focused learning episode on using particular art skills that we needed to decorate the push carts. So at the top we've got cutting out stencils, the second photo applying stencils, and the third photo using the spray can to decorate. And again, look down the left hand column, a large list of verbs that describe the learning experiences. If you look at the top slide, this is the stencil before it was completely peeled off, and then down the bottom you can see where the stencil has been peeled off to reveal the word devils. After they had been through this process, the students had to design posters and PowerPoint presentations that described what they had done or how they had achieved each of the processes. So I'll just read a little bit out of team identity here. We decided on the name by voting. There were lots of different ideas of the names, like Purple Pythons and Rhino Riders. In all the votes it was majority rules. So that is how we picked our name and logo for TecnoPush. Now the list of verbs down the left hand side in those previous slides were drawn from 2 sources. The first one here is again Coulthard, where she describes the 5 kinds of learning in the inquiry process under the headings of curriculum content, information literacy, learning how to learn, literacy competence, and social skills. The next one is Bloom's Revised Taxonomy, which is an inquiry process that teachers would be quite familiar with. And if you look towards the top of the pyramid, these are all the higher order thinking skills, and this is where the TecnoPush project mainly sat. Students were constantly applying, analysing, evaluating and creating. Now I'd just like to discuss some of my results or findings from this research project. I surveyed the students twice during the project. Initially it was a few weeks into the project, and the final questionnaire was given out a few weeks after they had completed the project. And as you can see here in this slide, in questionnaire 1, students were responding mainly with fact statements and 1 explanation statement. In questionnaire 2, there is a marked increase in explanation and conclusion statements. This demonstrated a significant growth in understanding of the topic and shows evidence of deeper processing and knowledge. Now, in order to achieve deep processing, students need to be interested in the topic, and as you can see in this graph, they were interested from the outset, and their interest levels just increased significantly throughout as they became more involved. Now, as teachers, if we were going to predict at the start what students were going to learn, I don't think we would have said cooperation and using tools, but that is the responses that they came up with. Now, it's very difficult for schools to teach cooperation and teamwork, but due to the enormous amount of group work and challenges faced by the class as a team, they have learnt this particular social skill and become more aware of it along the way. The class worked together as a community of learners rather than individuals, and they have learnt through social interaction and collaboration. These are just some of their responses to question 6. Reading from the top, when working together, you have to learn to cooperate with each other, to prepare for what's coming and think before you act. There is a lot of cooperation, and to cooperate with class members and to use tools. The using tools part comes in where students had to reconstruct the cart within a set time limit, so they all had to use basic handheld tools such as spanners and wrenches to put the cart together. Overall, the TecnoPush challenge was a very successful inquiry learning project, so I only have a few recommendations. The first one is to continue with projects that fit the inquiry learning format. The second one would be to introduce the KWL technique in K1 as a method to introduce inquiry learning and reflection right from the outset at school. The KWL technique is something that most teachers are familiar with, and it's a way of reflecting on learning. The K stands for know, as in what do I know? The W stands for what do I want to know? And the L is learned. What have I learned? The third point there is that reflect on learning more often. I think if the students who were doing the TecnoPush challenge had reflected more throughout, they would have realised the enormous amount of information that they learned and also the number of skills that they acquired throughout. The fourth point there, to recognise the necessity for collaboration on inquiry learning projects, and lastly, to promote the valuable learning that occurred during TecnoPush to parents, P&C and the wider community, which is part of what this PowerPoint presentation is doing. It's going out to parents so parents can see what the students were involved in and appreciate the level of learning and deep processing that was required by students to complete it.